Hello BookTube. So today I'm going to relate to you my views on my first taste of the Cosmere. That being Brandon Sanderson's collection of fantasy novels. The book I read for my introduction to this world, or set of worlds, was The Way of Kings, which is book 1 of the Stormlight archives. Now, while this is my first taste of the Cosmere, it's not quite my first reading of Brandon Sanderson, because I'm a big fan of The Wheel of Time, which was written and conceived by Robert Jordan, but after his passing, it was completed from written notes by Brandon Sanderson. So I have read some of his writing before, but it was always hard to know how much of it was Mr. Sanderson and how much was Mr. Robert Jordan. So I thought it was time to find out how Brandon Sanderson performs alone. And the answer is really quite admirably. So, bit of a background into the Way of Kings, or the Stormlight book. They're set on a world called the Roshar, where there's magic. Wouldn't be much of a fantasy book otherwise. And this magic is sort of fueled by storm energy that can be contained within gemstones. And well, that's really the tip of the iceberg. There's a great deal of world building in this book, which sits beautifully alongside the plot, and it's very rich world building. It's not a light touch, taking a world like ours and adding some magic to it. There's things like spren, which are sort of visible spirits. So if you have a fire, it attracts fire spren that dance around it. Or if you get an injury, it can attract rot spren if you let it go bad. Not recommended. And it's all these little touches that really keep the world feeling alien. Not least of which, a couple more points, is this world, Roshar, is constantly blasted by little hurricanes. They have the full intensity of hurricanes, but they sort of pass in a few hours. And they're very frequent, like every few days. And to deal with this problem, you have the plants have evolved somewhat unusually. For example, grass. When something threatening comes by, like a person walking along, or a huge hurricane approaching, the grass withdraws, disappears into a little hole. And all that's visible is rock, with lots of little grass-sized holes in. This sort of imagery, this level of alternate world building, doesn't always work. But in this book, it really did. And it's not just the physical world that is created in this book. There's multiple and rather complex cultures. Now, with all this world building alongside a plot, it is quite a large book. I hope that wouldn't put you off, because personally, I find the larger a book, the better. I like to get involved with the characters and the world, and you can't achieve that in a short book. So while all that world building is really quite fantastic, it's the characters that this book is about, and there are a number of point of view characters. Probably too many. We'll go through really the main ones. There's the one that I felt was the main character was called Kaladin. And he spends most of the book as a slave. But prior to becoming a slave, he was quite a fearsome warrior. And he spends the book sort of being a reluctant leader of other slaves, and sort of trying to find his destiny, whether he wants it or not. Another of the main characters, or we'll talk about two of them at once, are Dalinar and his son Adolin. Now these guys, and perhaps perhaps I should have mentioned this before. These guys are called Shard Bearers. They have magical armour and magical swords that makes each of them effectively an unstoppable warrior. So the only way one of these guys is going down is if the enemy also has a Shard Bearer with some magical armour and a magical sword to batter each other till they're dead. Now, a magical warrior that is effectively an army on his own sounds a bit ridiculous. But once again, the way it's written, it all sounds kind of expected. It doesn't feel unnatural at all. Thought that was really well done and really clever. The other thing to mention is this Dalinar. He's a high prince, got his army and that. He's having visions, telling him to do stuff. And he doesn't know if he's insane or not. I don't know whether wondering if you're insane suggests you are insane or sane. Would an insane person question if they were insane? I don't know. Anyway, can't remember what point I was making. Anyway, now, these three main characters, plus some others, so Kaladin, the slave, and Dalinar, and Adolin, and some other characters, they're all fighting in this war zone called the Shattered Plains. Constant battles, really quite exciting, with the politics of what is a royal court that has been effectively moved to a war camp. All stimulated by a rather intriguing character called Wit. Now, Wit is kind of the character that provides the link between all the different worlds of the Cosmere. Apparently. I've only read one book, so I didn't know that. But he's effectively the court jester, and really quite amusing. I'd like to meet him. Another major character is called Shallan. She's a wannabe historian, scientist character. Stroke thief. She was less interesting, if we were honest. I kind of felt like she was a means of introducing a more interesting character called Jasna, who Shallan is apprenticing herself to. We'll see how that pans out, but Shallan's chapters, they didn't really grip me the way that Kaladin's did. Now, the final thing I'm going to say, probably, is there's then a little host of other point of view characters. Some of them occur more than once, some of them just the one time in this book. And on finishing it, I didn't quite know whether that was a good thing or not. Some of these characters that just appear once, doing some random act, you don't know whether they're contributing to the story or not. But it leaves you wondering, questioning what their role is, what they might add to the story. Will it be revealed in the next book? Or in the 5th book? With an epic like this, you can never quite tell. But I quite like the not knowing. I don't suppose everybody does. But one of these minor characters that their chapters get written in the interludes between parts of the book. One of them is called Zeth. And where some of the characters in this book are the ultimate warrior because they have a magic sword and magic armour, this guy is just magic. And crazy. He is an unwilling assassin. The perfect warrior. And he's basically going around killing all the kings. And anyone else that he gets told to kill. And he spends pretty much his whole scenes wishing that he would meet a warrior good enough to kill him, because he wants to die. A very complex and interesting character. It's quite a shame he only gets a few chapters. Yeah, I would have liked to hear maybe more of Zeth and less of Shallan. Probably. If we could make requests. Mr. Sanderson, if you happen to watch this. No? Anyway, despite my my criticisms and wishes of changes, this is one of the best books I've read this year. It's definitely one of the first that's really left me with a very strong desire to go and read book 2. Although it's quite pricey, so I haven't bought it yet. But if you get the opportunity, I strongly recommend these books. I think they may go down as some of the best fantasy books written. Don't quote me on it yet, because I've only read one book, but it's looking good. Speaking of fantasy books, just so you know, I'm currently reading my first Rick Riordan book. To my shame, I've not read any of his books, so I'm currently working my way through Magnus Chase and the Sword of Summer. A very different style of fantasy book. Doesn't mean I'm going to enjoy it any less. Bye.